Steve Musick, welcome to the Edge television broadcast.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to be with you.
Man, I tell you what, as I talked to you earlier, and there's just one topic that really amazes me of all the programs I've done since 2004, which is in the hundreds or I don't know, thousands or whatever,
Wow.
every Saturday night. This topic here, I guess we could say near death experience, but I kind of like to know what's on the other side. And I think a whole lot of people want to know what's over there. Now, obviously, what you have to say tonight is your personal experience. And there are probably some folks that say, well, that didn't happen. And there are some folks that will believe you. And there's, you know how it is. Whenever you speak, you have the gamut, but we want to hear what you have to say.
I totally understand that. My story is authentic and it's true, and it's also really kind of out there. So I get it. I really do.
Well, that's why you're a perfect fit for the show because the edge, that's why we call this program The Edge, man. It's like,
Yeah.
now, is it the edge of sanity or, well, I'm not sure what edge that is, but we're on there. So,
Yeah. Okay. I
well,
love it.
well, welcome to the program. Steve, I've got your book here. I've read the book. It's awesome. And we'll be talking about it tonight. So let's get to the general introduction here. Introduce yourself to our audience. What are you about? What do you do? Where are you from? That type of thing.
I'm Steve Musick, and I'm a born and raised native of Denver, Colorado. My father was raised and born here in Denver, Colorado. There's a whole section of the city and county of Denver that was originally the Music Homestead. So I'm deeply, deeply rooted in the community in which I live currently.
Hmm. All right. So you currently reside in Colorado?
Yes, Denver, Colorado.
Okay. Well, that's not fair. I mean, when you look out your window, do you see mountains?
Oh, I do.
Like
I
that's
absolutely do.
okay. That's
Every day.
okay. I look outside my window and I see buildings, man. I mean, uh,
Oh,
I see concrete. Now that's really wrong, man. What this is not fair.
well, the beauty of technology today is you can literally do business from all kinds of different venues. And I'm born and raised here. I've got huge roots here. And I'm just glad that I can build a business and,
Mhm.
be part of commerce and do what I'm doing now. And teaching and technology really makes that happen.
What do you teach?
Right now, I'm an adjunct professor. I'm at the University of Denver, and I teach everything entrepreneurial there.
Hmm.
I'm teaching right now this quarter class in entrepreneurial ethics, something that is really, really important in our current culture.
Hmm.
Um, and then I also do. I'm a public speaker, and I teach and train people how to experience the kingdom of heaven in the here and now,
Hmm. At that university or separately at your home at another office?
separately.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that question. Does the faculty, are they aware of your extracurricular activities and your history?
Yes. Yeah,
Does
it's the people that hired me there at the management part of Daniels and within DU. We did all the normal perfunctory, the background checks and all of that kind of stuff. And when we were done with the interview, the guy leaned forward and he said, "So, tell me what heaven was like." And
okay.
I hadn't mentioned, I hadn't said a word,
Hmm.
but because it was not part of the engagement with the university. But people do their homework,
Hmm.
and he researched, and you pull up Google, and the first thing that pops up is all my life after heaven work, and
Hmm.
he's like, "I think that is so cool."
Hmm. So,
Yeah,
so you can't hide. They know who you are.
yeah.
I'm sure they should have done their social justice evaluation for against you or however that works.
But my students also do that. I mean,
Hmm.
they're the most connected, most wired cohort ever
Mm.
in history, and there is no hiding, which is I'm very comfortable with. It is who I am. It's part
Hmm.
of my story.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. It sounds to me like you have a firm foundation there, not subject to change or uh, how would they would apply pressure to you. But and the reason I will move on here shortly. But I just want my perception of Colorado and Denver is that seems to be a more liberal part of the country, and what you're talking about is sort of the antithesis of that, and so it you know it's you know so it kind of I just kind of wonder how that interaction plays out.
My message of the kingdom of heaven being closer than we think, and everyone can experience it repeatedly and should, it pretty well crosses a lot of boundaries and barriers. I believe very, very strongly for my entire lifetime, my adult lifetime, that I preach the gospel of Christ everywhere I go. If necessary, I talk about it. So at the end of the day, it's what you do and who you are that's more important with what you actually say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bring that to the students at the University of Denver. I bring that to the work that I do at Denver Seminary, where I'm on the board of directors for one of their ministries there. I'm just trying to be the best possible ambassador of the kingdom of heaven that I can be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I tell you what, Stephen, by reading your book there, I came to that conclusion. So I think you are definitely in that stream of your endeavor there. All right, well, let's get to it, Steve. Stephen, something happened to you while you were in the Navy. Is that where you begin this story, or is it? Do you have you want to go a little bit earlier with your childhood, like you did in the book?
I think beginning the story for a radio interview like this, let's start in the Navy. The United States government in 1975 was they were panicked about a swine flu epidemic running rampant over the country. And so they rushed a pharmaceutical company into a full-scale, we want to do this, we want to release it nationwide. And they needed a test bed for the swine flu vaccine. Well, who better? They used sailors at Great Lakes, where I was stationed, and they used soldiers at Fort Sheridan, which were also right next door in North Chicago. And I was allergic to the swine flu vaccine. They herded all of us into this gigantic hangar, and they used the pneumatic syringes, and they literally shot us all. And I had one of the more violent reactions to that. And essentially what happened was I'm in the emergency department, and I've got an IV in my arm, and a nurse Ratshed walks in, and she says, "This'll fix you right up." And it's the antidote to the swine flu vaccine. And she inserts it into my IV tube. Now, you wouldn't do this today. They would do something in the muscle first. But she inserted it in my IV tube. Now, it's almost funny, God has a sense of humor here, but because the song playing on the radio in the emergency department where I was from Electric Light Orchestra, and they were singing "Evil Woman." And I still can't hear that song today without getting shivers. Well, she pushed the plunger all the way into my IV tube. And they didn't know it, neither did I. I was barely 19 years old. And I'm in a place now where I'm allergic to the antidote. And they essentially gave me what amounts to a lethal injection. Now, I don't know what happened in the emergency room there, because when she pushed the plunger, I went out. And the next thing I know in the here and now is I wake up in intensive care isolation 5 weeks later. There's a nurse at the foot of my bed, and she's charting. And when I woke up, I startled her, and she got up and leaned over me, and she said, "Welcome back. We thought we lost you back there." And I'm thinking, where is back there, and where am I now, and how come I have a hard time breathing? During that 5-week period of time, I went to heaven. And I had a wonderful conversation with what in my mind was the risen Christ. And my experience in heaven totally changed life in the here and now.
Mm.
That's where the story starts.
Wow. Well, it's a heck of a first start there, Stephen. When I was reading that part about the Electric Light Orchestra, which happens to be one of my favorite bands, so I know that song. I sing that song, man. I can sing it. I can go in the right now. I might be cowboy, but I can sing that song. But when you're talking about that nurse there, it reminded me of a scene in the movie Armageddon with Bruce Willis. The drillers, they're going to get a physical before they go, and so they're in the doctor's office, and there's a nurse there giving people shots, and this guy says, "Oh, gee, lady, I'm just here to drill." And she says, "So am I." And then she lifts up a syringe with an 8-foot needle on the end of it, And so that's what I thought about when you said talk about that nurse.
But, I mean, it was a gigantic syringe to me, and obviously, they gave me aminophylline, which is it's a pretty normal bronchodilator, supposed to clean you out and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it was the worst thing you could have done.
Yeah. So, but when you got the shot, you didn't die then, right?
No, I in my vernacular here, the body, mind, and spirit. And essentially, my spirit said, eject, 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 because this guy's body is not suitable for occupation.
Mm-hmm.
And my soul, my spirit went to heaven. I'm gone. I'm done.
Mm.
And I think one of the things about my story is when I got to heaven, I knew exactly where I was. I knew it was heaven. It was a wonderful experience. One of the reasons that I know that it's in fact heaven is that I'm now 62 years old. So this happened 42 years ago. And my memories of that time are as pungent today as they were 42 years ago. Usually over a long period of time, memories sort of fade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really remember what I had for breakfast this morning, kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Everything of that is crystal clear. And I thought I was staying. And the most painful words I've ever heard ever in my life, from that day to this, were from Jesus with his arm over my shoulder, and he said it in a very forlorn way, "And you can't stay." And when he said you can't stay, bing, I wake up in intensive care isolation, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what just happened to me?
Yeah, I was reading that part to my wife Susan, and she was listening to me as I was reading that, and I saw that coming up, and she was busy about her chores, and she was listening, and then I kind of cornered her, and then I read that, and then I looked her right in the eyes, and I said, "You cannot stay," because I was reading for that Jesus saying that to you, and to get the emphasis there, and I thought, man, that is one sentence you do not want to hear when you're in heaven.
No,
because in my mind now, he could have said you can't stay, which meant I might be thinking I got to go down, like past the earth, down somewhere down further.
Yeah, it's like, what? Hello? And the way he said it was absolutely perfect, because there was pain in his voice. There was a forlorn sense of, oh, this is going to hurt, but you can't stay. And one of the things I've learned over my lifetime is that sovereignty is, period, end of story. The God above is sovereign over all things that go on, the good and the bad. I mean, some of the bad stuff that happens,
and the ugly,
it isn't like he's absent. He's around. But what he does is he takes the bad consequences and makes it good. Mm-hmm. He makes a good recipe out of really bad circumstances. Mm-hmm. And my entire lifetime is that's part of my story.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we have questions coming in from 3 different places right now: our Fast Blast, our live chat and website, and our streaming YouTube channel. Let's get to a couple of those for you, Stephen. This one here is from DC Doug. It says, "Have you seen?" It's not about heaven, okay? It's about Denver, I guess. But have you seen any Bigfoot over there?
No.
Okay. Now that could have been a sanity test too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't so far.
Okay. All right. Well, of course, my question would be, are there Bigfoot in heaven? But that's for another show. All right.
I didn't see any of those either.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal there. We'll have to go hunting up there. Um, and this person here asks, how did you know it was Jesus?
Um, it, Part of it is pure emotion. Um, in my experience, he was the only person I saw. And when I arrived in heaven, after understanding the impact of that place, he was there with arms extended, and he grabbed me and said, "Welcome." In my mind, there can be no one else. And he knew every circumstance of my life up to that point in time. And part of our conversation is he made all of what had happened to me up to that point in time. He made it okay,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore he was God. And in my view, since I know no one can see God, they see the Son.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Son. So
Yeah, and in the book, you describe what, and I guess the visage of Jesus. You describe
yeah,
the way he looked. An interesting thing happened, referring back to my conversation with my wife reading the book. You were describing what you saw in heaven
yeah,
and what it was like, and then she says something like a kind of off the cuff, like, "Well, you know, because you said you saw you heard music and you saw various things in vibrant colors." And she said, "Well, I know there wouldn't be bugs there." And the next sentence I read was, "And you heard the buzzing of bugs." So,
yeah.
wait a minute now, man. We was hoping for a heaven without bugs, but what's going on with that?
Sorry. In my experience, there are bugs and insects and birds and all that.
All there,
It's all
all
there.
there.
I
But you,
mean, people ask me, they say, "Okay, wait a minute. Are there dogs in heaven?" I say, "Well, I'm hoping that there are dogs in heaven. I didn't see any when I was there."
mhm.
And then there's another guy that asked me at a speaking thing. He said, "I don't think cats are going to be in heaven. Were there any cats there in heaven?"
Mhm. Mhm.
I poked fun at him and I said, "Well, cats aren't Christians, so
Mhm.
no."
You know, whoa. Uh,
I know. Now we're going to get mail from all the cat haters.
yeah,
I'm
okay.
only kidding, just teasing.
God loves cats, people. Hey,
Yeah. Hey.
okay, so your experiences. Let's get to the tunnel because
Yeah.
I've had a number of people on the show that talk about a tunnel, and it's almost a euphemism. You know, you go to a tunnel and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And conversely, I had a guest said they had a near hell experience. As they said, there's a tunnel that goes down there. Only that tunnel is surrounded with a very foul stench, and there are demons and snakes embedded into the tunnel structures that are many points above the earth that go down. So I know that's not your expertise, and it didn't happen to you, but you went up. What was going through that tunnel like? Was it instantaneous? Was there a travel time? How'd that go?
It's instantaneous. It was a tunnel of light. Um, the science fiction does a really good job of that. If you're a Star Wars person, you would say that you just kicked in the hyperdrive. And if you're a Star Trek person, you would say that you go through a wormhole or you go into warp speed. It feels very much like that. You do feel like you're moving. You feel like you're going someplace. And in my experience, when I got to the end, I was literally pushed out into heaven. And heaven for me was a real place. It had gravity. There was a real place. There were, and again, we spent 10% of the book talking about here's what heaven was like.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what it felt like. Here's what it looked like. Here's what it smelled like. The music that is embodied in heaven. It's just an awesome, awesome place.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm certainly believing that's going to give hope to people because everybody, and I noticed that sort of toward the end of the book, there was a point where you were saying that you've had the experience, so you have a lot more confidence in talking about heaven and various things that really are biblically based. Whereas a lot of folks say they go to church every week, in a repetitive fashion, and it's part of a program type of thing. but they don't really have that really sense that, they're just kind of like maybe still just kind of holding out for hope that there might be, but there might not be, and this is nothing more than they use the church going as a card, so to speak. Well, just in case I want to play that card, in case I'll go through this ritual, but they're really not sure. How do you convince those folks that what you saw was true and that there is, in fact, an afterlife and a heaven?
The best example of that, and frankly, part of the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing now after all these years, is that I continue to have experiences in the here and now that feel and look very much like the hereafter. Now, I call them bubbles. They're bubbles of the kingdom of heaven in the here and now. And they're echoes of the original sound. They're not exactly heaven, but they feel a lot like it. And the gigantic discovery here is that other people were involved in the bubbles, not just me. People that hadn't had a near-death experience, that hadn't been in my kind of a position, don't have my life and don't have my story, and yet the sovereignty of God expands in the here and now in a bubble form, and people get to experience what it's like. They get a taste of heaven. And that validates for me that where I was actually a sovereign place, and that I'm in a place where I teach and train people how to experience heaven in the here and now. How do you do that? How do you make that happen? Mm-hmm. And it's the calling on my life now. It's what I get to do for however many years the Father has ordained for me to do this. Mm-hmm. And so that's my explanation for what I had was an authentic experience.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, when you went through the tunnel, you almost describe a Stargate experience, a teleportation of some kind, where you literally went from, I guess you were on a bed, and you were transported to a tunnel, and then you were standing up in what you describe as a field of some kind. Can you describe the colors and what it was when you initially appeared at that place?
The visual part of heaven is we live in a land of bland, and we live in an environment now that's very much like 1950s television. It's grainy and black and white, but it's all we know. We think this is good. When we compare that to heaven, heaven is like HD on steroids. It's as vibrant as you can imagine. And it's awe-inspiring. It literally takes your breath away because everything is so pungent. It just literally leaps out and grabs you. Mm-hmm. So visually, going through the tunnel, I was pushed out into a place that I'm thinking, I'm liking this. This is absolutely the best place I've ever seen in my whole life. And all of my experience was outdoors. It was a field to the right and a great big oak tree in front of me and hills in the backgrounds and forests and then Christ.
Mm-hmm. So all the colors were exceedingly vibrant, sort of like a 4K television, even maybe better than that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I take the best cinematography that you can put together, Avatar. Mm-hmm. And that's as pungent, and compare that to a black and white. In the theatrical business, To Kill a Mockingbird, which was a great movie, but all shot in black and white, and compare that to Avatar, which is every color you can imagine and in 3D. That's the contrast that you have between here and heaven.
And so you were there. How long did it take for Jesus to appear to you while you were standing in that field?
It was like half a minute. Mm-hmm. One of the contexts of heaven is time only exists here. There is no sense. There is no context of time. For example, when I was in heaven, it felt to me like, I was staying forever, and I was liking it. And it felt like my conversation with Christ was like an afternoon.
Hmm.
When in fact, as Earth counts time, it was 5 weeks
Wow.
because I was in intensive care isolation in a coma for
Hmm.
5 weeks. And you can tell from my personnel records that the United States Navy, they never thought I was going to wake up. That they were trying to figure out, holy cow, we killed this guy, and how do we tell his family? I mean, it was kind of laughable when you look at my personnel records.
Hmm. So you said that you were there by yourself and Jesus, and you had a very personal conversation about your life and various things. So that whole area that you were in, do you think that is or do you perceive it was a regular entry point where other folks dropped by, or was that whole scene created for you?
You know, I personally think that experience was specific for me,
Hmm.
and that I think everybody's experience that they have in their heaven with their Jesus are equally as sovereign. So I have plenty of room in my faith and in the way that I see things of spirit, where someone could have a totally different experience than mine, and yet it's still heaven.
Hmm. Hmm. So it's,
One of the things I've learned over the years is that the kingdom of heaven really doesn't like being put in a box. And the more that you can have an open, wide angle view of life and faith, the better off you are. Putting a box on stuff really doesn't functionally work very well.
so you were there, but then you were really liking it, and you didn't really want to come back.
Ooh.
And but let's get you talk about the good and the bad. Now, what about the ugly? All of us have things that maybe we were not proud of and that type of thing. Did he discuss those things with you, or did you have a perfect background and you don't have to worry about it?
Oh, no. My background growing up in the first 19 years, I grew up in a Christian home, but um, it was a very violent home. And so I grew up in a place of violence and vacancy. So it was a vacancy in that I had no idea who I really was.
Hmm.
I had no personal identity. I didn't know who I was. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. It's part of the reason I ended up in the Navy. But I was also in a place where my brother was bipolar, undiagnosed bipolar, and we were latchkey kids. And so when we got home from school, it was like terror time for me. And so there was a whole bunch of stuff that went in with the way that I was raised that Jesus unpacked for me and talked to me about what was the intention in that and why all of that happened, and that his job was to be able to say, and he made it okay.
Hmm.
It's okay. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happened to you, and it's okay. And so there was an element for me at that point that said, well, shoot, well, okay. It got me here. We grew up Orthodox Episcopalians. So I'm very, very comfortable even today in very high Orthodox kind of environments. Um, and I'm almost a spiritual and a religious omnivore. I see the Father in all kinds of different expressions of faith here.
Hmm. Hmm. When I had a conversation with you, I was actually traveling, and I asked you about the term synchronicity. You used the word bubbles, and in some places you use the word um, thin places too. But when you heard the song "Evil Woman" at the very moment, I would describe that as a synchronicity.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with the term, is there a correlation? Is it just a matter of semantics between the two of experiences that have some message or some marking that you're either on the right path, or you're being acknowledged in some way? Is that the same thing?
Yeah. The whole concept of synchronicity basically says that um, systems and organizations that are here in the here and now um, also then align with the heart of the Father. And you can see circumstances lining up for the Father to do something very, very dramatic. Now, for me, a lot of that is what I call bubbles. Bubbles of the kingdom of heaven are places where the normal operations of the here and now, the God of this world, the system of this world, gets somehow pushed aside, and the kingdom of heaven drops in and takes reign over circumstances. Mm-hmm. And that we're now in a place where we get to participate in, I'm going to say, a preview of coming attractions. It's the trailer to the ultimate feature film that we're all going to star in one day for those of us who know and love Christ. Mm-hmm. And so circumstances here on earth can occur in which heaven shows up. And we see that in all kinds of different places. Some of that is the miraculous, and some of that is incredible things that happen. For me, it's just simply the sovereignty of God, where the Father decides, okay, I'm going to show up here and I'm going to change things. And that's, the beauty of that is that we get an opportunity to participate mm-hmm. in some of that activity.
Mm. One of the viewers asked, can you describe Jesus? What was he like?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, my wife and I were at a Christian conference, and a guy by the name of Ted Belt, B-E-L-T, came up, and he was doing a whole video series on a present day, and he basically went through the parables of the Messiah and used present day language and present day circumstances. But the actor that they chose for that role, when they splashed him on the dais, I just gasped. And my wife leaned forward and she said, "What was that? Well, what happened there?" I said, "That's the guy. That's a spitting image of my Jesus."
Wow. And
so if you Google Ted Belt and you go to Conversations with the Messiah, they do videos and that kind of stuff. The guy that they chose for Jesus, that's the guy. Spitting image, and it was a dramatic moment for me, because he's in real life that's as good as it gets.
Mm-hmm. So when you were walking around Jesus, you said that his arm was around you, and you were making a loop. Are you saying that took 5 weeks?
No, for me, the conversation in the meadow with Christ felt like an afternoon. I mean, it did not feel like a long time. And you got to remember the context here. I was 19 years old. I was a mess. I was a mess. I was in the military. And all of a sudden, I'm now in absolutely the most incredible place ever. One of the things about heaven is being in heaven is like being inside pure joy. The best way is take anything that's happened in your life, the absolute happiest, joyous, most joyous place in your life ever, and amplify that by a factor of 10, and you get an idea about what it's like to be in heaven. And that's kind of why I was really excited about being there. I mean, yes, it was wonderful to be with Jesus, but the place just comes after you. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was painful when Jesus said, "And you can't stay." Because I went from a place of pure security, complete health, complete freedom, pure joy, back into a fractured body in intensive care at Great Lakes. And I'm thinking, oh, great. In the card game, I ended up with the old maid. And one of the questions that I asked shortly after my near-death experience was, Jesus always said in heaven, he said, and everything was okay, that he would make it okay. Mm-hmm. And I remember kneeling down in the chapel going, "Lord, is this okay?" Because it doesn't feel like this is okay. Mm-hmm. Now, frankly, it feels a whole lot like the other guy. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things, sovereignty is. There was a purpose for all of that. kind of hard to figure it out at the time, but you know.
Yeah, and
So,
you actually have further for those watching the program, and I see somebody just bought your book. They just said they just bought your book. Um, you actually have a more in-depth description of Jesus. And now, a lot of it, there's songs out there that talk about mansions in heaven and various things. Do you think that the actual, when you're there to stay, that you would have a mansion in a field like that? Or
well,
do you think this was, because I'm trying to differentiate, was that just a meeting when somebody has a personal meeting with Jesus, they go this field, this and to connect with them, it's an earth-like, very vibrant place. But I'm wondering if heaven itself is actually a different place.
you know, I don't have words for that. I don't know. I can speak to my experience and what my experience has done for me. And that the experience that I continue to have even in the here and now. Does that mean that maybe heaven isn't when I get there for the full, and I know that I'm staying? Maybe it's a different environment. I don't know. I don't have wisdom for that.
Well, when we come back in the second hour here, if we take a 5-minute break, well, I want to discuss what you talk about your current heaven experiences, and as you say in the book, how your time in heaven can transform life on earth. If people can understand that they can have these experiences, it's a very awesome thing to discuss. But Steven Musick, how can people get that book?
If you go to Amazon, we're all over Amazon. That's actually the best and easiest place. It retails for $16, but Amazon's on for like $12. And the audio version that's also on Amazon is even a little bit cheaper. Amazon's the best place, but I mean, my book is everywhere.
It is indeed.
And so you can also, we publish teaching material and training material every week. And we do that on our website, which is stevenmusick.com. And we also have a Facebook page by the same name, Connected to Life After Heaven. Because my calling is to teach and train people that the kingdom of heaven is closer than we think.
Okay. All right, Steve, we're going to take you out of the picture. Turn your sound down, and we'll be back with you in 5 minutes.
Hey, good.
All right.
I need more coffee.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. You are watching or listening to the Edge Television broadcast. Tonight, we have on our Newsmaker line Steven Musick. We'll be back with him right after we take this 5-minute break. We'll be right back as well. And by the way, Peter from Australia asked this question: if everyone would pray for his mother Sophia, who needs some healing there. So if you just think of Peter in Australia, think of his mom, mom Sophia, and keep her in your prayers as well. All right, welcome back, Steve. Man, we had a great conversation in the first hour. By the way, what are you drinking? Coffee or?
I am drinking coffee. You betcha.
Okay, well, cheers, mate. It's the only way.
I was only a sailor for 8 months, but if you've been in the Navy for any period of time and you don't drink coffee, I'm not sure you were in the real Navy. I got the coffee bug early, and I've still got it.
Okay. Hey, let me ask you something. I'm wondering, as I was reading a part of your book, I read it in as I was reading it, I heard it in my mind a certain way. Would you mind could you indulge me if I read a paragraph of your book?
Sure.
Okay, but I want to read now. I'm going to try to read it the way that I heard it this morning in my mind. It was playing in my mind, and so it's not a mocking thing at all. I want to be a little bit dramatic because this is the way I heard it.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. This is on page 39. It goes like this. You're writing of your book. It says, I am in a place of explosive peace, another paradox. Peace pursues you, lives and moves toward you, around you. There is no ebb and flow to the harmony. It is an ocean without tides. It's there in the same way that my vision is vibrant and smells are pungent and the sounds are soothing and wonderful. This peace explodes at me. It's not passive in any way. It comes for me. This peace is not just a lack of conflict. It's something at a deep level that reassures all is well. Everything is okay. That place must be heaven. That place, heaven, is physical, not physical. It's real. In fact, it's more physical and real than the world I've known. It's not an ethereal, disembodied state, as some might think. All my senses are brilliant and deep. There is weight, there is movement. My body feels an overwhelming sense of freedom. It is wonderful. It is free. That's the way I heard that when I read that this morning.
But I had a lot of help in crafting the manuscript and getting the book out. My with is a very gifted and talented young man, and part of what he did is we just spent a really long period. We spent over a week talking together, recording in microphones, and he just did the classic journalist thing of he asked me questions and then got the tape recorder running. And essentially what I did was I just went back and recounted my experience of what it was like to be in heaven. And one of the things that was sort of disarming for him is he said, you weren't like rehearsing or remembering. He said, you were there. You were experiencing it as we were talking. And he did a really good job of crafting that and putting it together in a way that our hope was that the readers would also get a taste, get a sense of what it was like to be in heaven for them. And fortunately, that's really happened. The communication that we get, the commentary that we get, people have read my book and said, gosh, I've experienced those bubbles of heaven, but I just didn't know what they were. I mean, I really didn't understand it. And your book gave me context for that. And when I get those messages on our website and in public, I just, I give a great big, cheer. It's like, atta baby, because that's the deal. Experiencing the kingdom of heaven here is why I'm here. It's why I'm still here.
Now, later, did you not have another experience similar to that?
I was, the United States Navy discharged me as a disabled veteran, and I was 20 years old now, and I didn't think I was going to be disabled very long, but it turns out I was disabled for 10 years, and I had 60% lung damage in both lungs, and I had COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and I was sick a lot. And after 10 years of being sick and having to take massive amounts of medication just to be able to breathe, I got to a place where I couldn't play with my kids. And I wept out loud because I wanted to be the right kind of a father for my kids. And so I was getting sick one week, and I decided to go to the midweek service at our Vineyard church that we were there. And the pastor called me out without naming names from the stage. And I was compelled. I got up and went forward, and Randy Phillips laid hands on me, and I went back to heaven. And it was like, at that time, it was like electricity went through my body. And I had the same experience. I went through the same tunnel of light. I went through the same thing, and I saw the same Jesus.
Wow.
Same guy. And he now gave context for what happened over the last 10 years and about why I'm disabled. And the message from Jesus was, and this time things will be different. Things will be different. And when he said that, I woke up on the floor of the Vineyard Church, and I'd been in heaven for 20 minutes this time, not 5 weeks, but 20 minutes. And I woke up, and for the first time in 10 years, I had a complete inspiration of air. I was completely restored. And I went back to the VA, and they went, something's goofy. I went back to my original doctor, and the doctor said, I I don't know how this happened, but he said, you got your x-rays look totally different. And I told him, well, I went to this church service and God gave me my lungs back. And and he's clinical. He's going, well, okay, but that was a pure gift. It was a pure gift to me. And so, you know, I look out my window at mountains and I can climb them, and rivers, and I can now go into the high country and fish. And I was able to play with my kids. And that's part of God's sovereignty as well. I'm thinking, yay, thank you. Because I was prepared to be disabled for the rest of my life. Not really happy about it, but sovereignty is. I got to figure out how to manage and do the best I can. Well, the Father had a different idea.
Have you ever heard of somebody named Mark Taylor?
I have not.
Mark Taylor is a firefighter, and he battled sicknesses to a near death. I don't. He certainly. I don't recall that he had a heaven experience, but he was near death. But he was given prophecies, and they're called the Mark. Actually, I think they're called the Trump prophecies. He was given information about before so many years before Trump got even nominated that he was going to be the president, but he went through extreme a period of illness and sickness, and I'm just wondering if that is a trying by fire, that any type of thing, and I know she said we had a conversation with Jesus that basically the good and the bad were applicable to your life and had meaning.
Yeah.
And they weren't random events, but I'm wondering if there is a preparational cost to get the deeper experiences. What do you say to that?
I think that faith is galvanized for people through siege and through trials. And, life isn't exactly a rose garden, and it's not designed to be. We thrive in challenges, and I think that kind of thing happens. For us, for Elaine and I, my wife and I, we had the privilege of ministering to a young girl who holds a world record. And she's the person that's been on chemotherapy for longer than anyone else in history.
Wow.
And still be alive. And every time we would meet with her, she was on, chemotherapy does terrible things to your skin and we would meet with her and we would wash her feet and we would put special lotion on her hands and feet. Mm-hmm. And we just loved her. We just loved her like she was one of our own, like she was our daughter. And she lived like that for 32 years. And every time we would meet with her, a bubble of the kingdom of heaven would show up. And I'm thinking, how can that happen? How can you have a bubble of the kingdom of heaven? How can you feel the kingdom of heaven being around her, and yet she has to go through this horrible thing every week? And the answer to that came pretty specifically, that she lives in a bubble of the kingdom of heaven in order to live. It's the trade. And, this last year, she flew in for Thanksgiving with us. And she said, oh, yeah, I wanted to let you know I'm not doing that chemo thing anymore. And I'm thinking, yay, that's the best news I've heard ever. And she looked fabulous. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know why she spent 32 years in chemo. But she says, I'm happy. Life is the way that it is. And I'm thinking, if I could do that, if she could do that, well, what about me? And it was our pure pleasure to be with her and to wash her feet and put lotion on and rest in the presence of the kingdom when we meet. And that didn't happen last Thanksgiving. And there's a part of me that's really joyful, and there's a part of me that's sad about that, because she now gets to live life like the rest of us. but she's really happy not to take chemo every Saturday.
Mm.
So I think, to answer your question, I think we go through trials and siege and difficulty here, and some of that's organized and orchestrated by the King of Kings in order for us to be who we're supposed to be and do what we're supposed to do. And at the same time, we pray for complete health and complete restoration. Because you know what? I don't know. I mean, I do what I can do. And our call was to pray for that little girl for 32 years. Because there is a God and I'm not him.
I noticed there were some things that were very personal to me as I was reading your book. One of those was interactions with other people, as if I don't know how you described it, more of the having what seemed to be a random interaction many times turn out completely different than random, or maybe it becomes. Maybe you choose an interaction with someone and you maybe have a word for them that they need and you don't even know it, but you just have this desire to interact with them that could be an unction maybe from the Holy Spirit thing to follow through. But is this how you I don't want to say manufacture the bubbles of heaven, but is it preparing the ground for a bubble from heaven?
Yeah. It's really important that when we talk about bubbles of the kingdom of heaven, that I don't expect anything to happen, but I anticipate everything to happen. So I'm in a place where I'm prepared, I'm ready, I volunteer, and it's one of those things. Father, my life is one of those, use me however you want. So, as an example, in the first quarter of every year, after the lakes are all frozen and the rivers are not navigable, and I'm a fly fisherman.
Okay.
And I take my fly gear and we go salt to salt. I go saltwater fly fishing. And so I was headlong into the early part. I'm at the airport and I'm dressed like a vagabond. I'm totally decked out like a fisherman. And I'm standing in line to get on the plane.
Okay.
And there's a family in front of me. Standing in front of me is a woman, young lady, that looks like she's luminescent, she's shining. And I've seen that before. And my dialogue now is, really? Really? I'm on vacation. I mean, look at me. I look like a vagrant, And but I got close enough to her and I touched her. And there's something really important in touch in this. And she turned around, and what I saw was a lady who looked like Esther. Radiant. She had a completely symmetrical features, all of it. And I couldn't stop myself. I went into neutral and the Spirit was talking. And now I'm a film producer and a screenwriter as well. That's part of the work that I'm doing now. And I did not have a business card, but I had one of my Life After Heaven, and it has the screenwriter stuff. And I handed it to her and I said, look, when you're back from vacation and I'm back from my fly fishing venture and I'm talking to her and her family, and I said, we should get together and we should have conversation because you have a gift that is rather amazing and incredible. And I want to be able to help you harness your gift. Well, it was 6 weeks later and her mother called and she said, I took your card and I read your book, and my husband took your card and read your book, and who the heck are you? And she said, what do you want with my daughter? And I said, well, I think your daughter belongs in Hollywood, in modeling, and she belongs in the advertising business. And I said, being a film producer and a screenwriter, I'm connected to all kinds of Hollywood folk. And I said, it seems like there's a reasonable thing that we could connect and do. Well, there's a relationship there. It's holy, it's divine, and we're going to take that 19-year-old girl and we put her up. We wrote a blog post about her. I'm going to connect her to my Hollywood folks, and she's auditioning for an agency in I think it's San Antonio now, San Antonio or Austin, at some place in Texas, and they're devout believers. They're like, this is really strange, but it feels really good. And my commentary to them is, welcome to the kingdom of heaven, because that's the way the kingdom works. And we're going to publish that blog post, I think, this month. And if you go to our .com site, you'll read about it. She is an absolutely delightful young woman.
For somebody,
totally belies. She fits in the millennial cohort, but she's not a millennial at all. It's really neat to see what might happen.
Well, see, for somebody who's going through things, and I think that's probably a large part of the audience. I mean, and there seems to be seasons that people go through, but I am sure that there are those that are suffering in one way or another. They're hearing you talk about heaven and wonderful things, and they're saying, "Did God forget me? How do I know that He even cares?"
You know, my comment to that would be that the Father never misses a trick. He doesn't forget anything. He uses it all, the good and the bad, and that finding the Father in the midst of trauma is one of the hardest things to do and one of the most important. And so a big part of our work and our ministry is working with people who have gone through and are in the middle of trauma, in order to help them find their way out. Because the Jesus that I know is redemptive, that He will come after us, and we surrender. And we surrender to Him, and we surrender the outcome. It's like, Lord, if I get you, that's enough. I don't need you and fill in the blank. Sometimes you get the fill in the blank, and you go, oh, thanks. You know, my beloved recovered from cancer, and I get her now, and that's a blessing. But it's also, the Lord took my beloved, and she's now in heaven, and she's preparing a place for me. And there's sovereignty in both of those outcomes. The idea is just figure out, Lord, He knows all things, and He knows the beginning and the end. He knows how this thing finishes. Teach me, help me figure it out, and be by my side. And He wants to, and He will.
As I was talking about the heaven bubbles, as you put them, you also you call something thin places. What would you describe a thin place?
A thin place is a place where the kingdom of this world and the kingdom of heaven occupy this at the same time, and it sort of narrows the gap, and it creates an environment from which the kingdom of heaven can be more fully expressed. So, you know, thin places, you know, experiencing the kingdom of heaven spiritually is one of those thin places. And there's an organization in North Wichita called Hope Ranch for Women, and that's one of those thin places. We've had now people from all over the country go to Wichita, Kansas, and go onto the grounds of Hope Ranch for Women and just sit and bake in the thin place that is Hope Ranch for Women. That's an organization that rescues women from human trafficking and works over a period of time to help them to restore them to sustainability. It's what they do. And you can't do that. You just can't do that but for being a thin place.
For those, I could use all kinds of descriptive on a human trafficker. Would a human trafficker ever be invited into that field through that tunnel?
Uh, you know, my answer to that is yes, because I'm in a place where Jesus would leave the 99 to go get the one, and that person may be the one. And I'm also in a place where I don't get to make that call. That's above my pay grade.
Right.
I believe that everybody can be rescued right up to the 11th hour, but I'm in a place where our job is to create a relationship between us and the kingdom through Christ. And that relationship is where the joy is here. So, you know, getting saved and going to heaven is really, really big. But occupying and operating as an ambassador of the kingdom of heaven in the here and now is even better. You know, you know, Jesus, when he sent out the disciples, he sent them with a message that said, the kingdom of heaven is near to you. And the disciples went, this is really cool. Look at what happened. Look what happened. You know, and they got to do the things that Jesus did.
So he wasn't saying when he said the kingdom of heaven is nigh or near to you, he wasn't saying you're about ready to die and go to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of
I've always kind of took it that way.
No, we're you see, part of the message of my life is that you don't have to have a near-death experience in order to experience what we're experiencing now. It's a pretty interesting thing that's happening to us, that we've discovered that people from all kinds of different walks can experience what we've experienced, and they didn't have a near-death experience. I'm over there going, I'm really onto something. This is a big deal. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I think that we're now experiencing 100 generations of experiential drift. And that what we're experiencing now is exactly what they thought was supposed to happen when Christ ascended through the clouds. And that he sent the Holy Spirit, and he said the kingdom will come, and the kingdom is close. And so I'm in a place of saying, you know what? The kingdom that we're experiencing now is very much like the hereafter. It's not heaven to the full, but you know what? It'll do until either Jesus comes back or we all go to heaven.
Is that
and it's about relationships, love and care, and relationships in the here and now.
Is that where it says in earth as it is in heaven? Was his intention that heaven be experienced on earth?
Yes, that's thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Religion, unfortunately, has reinterpreted that as a parable. You know, it's as though Jesus was throwing us a curveball. And I'm here to say, and part of my message is that's a four-seam fastball. We're in the baseball season right now. That's right down the heart. That's a literal statement. And we should experience more of the kingdom of heaven than we do. And our discovery recently is that we're going to tell this story. We're going to talk about it, because if more people would experience the kingdom of heaven as they originally intended it, our culture would be different. The people would be different. We would treat people differently than we do. And I don't know about you, but I'm high time for a change in our culture. And maybe that's what the Father has in mind with where our message is now and where it seems to be heading.
Well, it sure is. It sure is like a salve to the culture as it is right now, which seems to me is, you know, I keep thinking, well, hopefully the darker the night, we got that part, but I'm looking for the brighter the light. You know, so I think that's kind of what you're saying, is that should be, people need to start picking up that mantle and start making that light shine a little bit brighter, or at least be allowed to be used to let that light be brighter. And I think, you can't go into a room and turn on the dark. So we need to find a way to illuminate our sphere of influence around us. And so you think that this book, if somebody was to get that book, they would understand a little bit better of the importance of their life, the meaning of their life, and how they can improve others with it?
Yeah, yeah. And our one of the interesting things about writing a book like that and then being public and having a website and that kind of thing, doing a lot of speaking and teaching, is I'm an echo chamber. And I really do know a couple of things. One, there's a very strong shift in our country and our culture toward good.
Really?
And it gets drowned out by the noise and the chaos of our culture, but it's there. That shift toward good is really there, and it's really powerful. And I see it in all kinds of different places. And that it's louder. It's louder now than it was last month. It's louder now than it was a year ago. And I'm very encouraged by that, because there are all kinds of people who have very similar messages to mine that I don't know. We're not connected by anything, but it's kind of serendipity. I'm seeing people talk about stuff from New York and stuff from Florida and stuff in Nashville and LA and my Hollywood people. I mean, there's some stuff going on in Hollywood that would actually blow your doors off, and it doesn't get any ink. And I think the Father really likes surprising people. I'm very excited about what's happening in the entertainment business. Mm-hmm. Music is also another one of those. So I'm encouraged. I'm in a place that says, you know what? Fan into flame that is inside of you and bring good forward. And thy kingdom come is part of that.
All right. A question came in, says, have you ever heard of Mary Kay Baxter?
I have a vague recognition of that name. I don't know the specifics.
Yeah. I think she had a near-death experience of hell. Jesus, according to her, Jesus took her to hell to show her that was real. I mean, your testimony is that Jesus took you to heaven to show you went to heaven. And Jesus showed you that it is real. She says that same Jesus took her to hell to say that it's real. And I know that's not your message, but is hell real?
Yes. Same. I would say absolutely yes. Because not everyone gets redeemed. The paradox of the kingdom is we're free to choose. And we can choose no. Mm-hmm. And when we choose no, I'm not a universalist. People choose no, and they go to a totally different place, and it's altogether horrific.
When Jesus discussed the good and the bad of your life, were you embarrassed of any of the things that were the bad part?
No. Part of that is they happened to me. And so I was in a place where, there's the sin that you have for yourself, and then there's the sin committed against you. Mm-hmm. And in my case, the latter was large, and it was almost overshadowing. Mm-hmm. And clearly, none of us is perfect. Mm-hmm. And I'm redeemed and forgiven. I mean, I need forgiveness every day. Because I fall short. This is not heaven. We're not complete. We're not finished yet. Mm-hmm. And so I was in a place of restoration of my soul when I was in heaven.
Mm-hmm. The Bible says that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. What's your take on that?
I believe that. I believe that. The Bible's just littered with angelic visitation and angels, and I believe that there are angels and there are assignments for the angels here, and I'm vaguely aware. I have some experience in that realm. I wouldn't say it's a strength of mine, I do know that they operate, and I know they don't like to be seen here.
Mm.
That part I know.
Mm.
They like to operate in the wings, in obscurity.
In the peripheral.
If they were on a set, they wouldn't be front and center. They'd be in the shadows and in the wings, standing by.
Mm-hmm. Can we call on their assistance?
I think that's a mistake, because our intercessor is Christ,
Mhm.
and we go to Christ. Now, how Jesus decides to intercede in our lives, well, that's his domain. That's up to him.
Mhm.
And angels bow to Christ, and therefore our avenue has got to be to the Son of God, and through him, angelic.
There's a constant push to inoculate everyone against the flu every season. You see it on billboards, and you get discounts at CVS and various places. Would you recommend not for people to get those injections after what you've been through?
My experience was unique to me. So I don't get the swine flu vaccine every year. I mean, that would be crazy for me to do that.
Right. Unless you want to see Jesus.
Yeah, really. It's like, okay, I'm ready. Come on. I'm in a place where I believe God can heal in all kinds of different ways, and the miracle of medicine and the miracle of some of what's been created. It's above my pay grade to tell you, well, gee, that's not a good idea, or that is a good idea. Mm-hmm. I'm in a place of pray about that and what works here, what feels sovereign. Mm-hmm. Get a swine flu shot, and if you just as soon not, don't. Mm-hmm. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right. Well, let me ask you. So you went through all these health issues. Would you have traded those, knowing that if at the end you would get a vision of, or you get experience having, not vision, because to you it's more than a vision. You were there. Would you say I would not trade the physical ailments I had for that experience?
I believe that everything that happened to me is happened for a reason, and there's sovereignty in it. And my job is to figure out Lord, what are you intending here? It's one of those, I need to understand what's happening to me now from not with my eyes, but from heaven's context. Mm-hmm. And Lord, help me see that. Help me understand what I'm going through now from your eyes and your perspective. And if I don't understand, if I don't get it, I trust the relationship that I have between the Father and the Son and the Spirit, that is for my good, period. Mm-hmm. Full stop. I'm okay with that. So, I was in a great place in the United States Navy and ended up a disabled vet and disabled for 10 years, mm-hmm. restored. And I'm very, very grateful for full health and vitality at 62. And I never take that for granted. Mm-hmm. All of that was ordained by God before he created the earth. So who am I? I will accept however this plays out. Mm-hmm. And the paradox of that is, at the same time, I earnestly pray that, Father, your kingdom come, thy will be done here. And because I believe what we currently are experiencing is not what they originally thought of. It's a product of all of our really bad choices. And we could do better. I mean, we could do better, and should. That. And it's especially in a relational context.
Steven, you said that when you were in that field, you heard music, but you couldn't discern where it was coming from. And you said it wasn't a song either. Can you describe what that music sounded like?
The best example to that would be when you create a piece of music, a symphony, for example, mm-hmm. you're going to lay in the bass tracks first. because the base of that is on which everything else is built in a music score. Mm-hmm. So the music in heaven is the bass tracks. It's the heart and soul of the music. And it's part of what gives weight and substance to heaven. Now, the words of Jesus are like the melody. That's the best example that I can come up with for what heaven sounded like to me. And while I've been teaching about this, I've had some really, really professional, talented musicians talk to me about what it's like for them to create a piece of music spiritually. And they go, I'm thinking that's the bubble of heaven that you keep talking about. And I'm going, you're probably right. And a lot of worship leaders have also dialogued with me and said, I go to a totally different place when I worship. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, welcome to heaven.
Now, do you go to a vineyard church? Is that what you said?
Currently, we don't. We're members of a small. It's small. There's like 400 of us, and we're at a community covenant church in Arvada, Colorado. Mm-hmm. It's real close to where I grew up. It's real close to the Orthodox Episcopal Church where I, cut my teeth on theology and learning about faith. But it's a community of kingdom followers. Mm-hmm. And it's relational. It's deeply, it's where we're supposed to be. And I have great, deep relationships there.
There are those that I've heard at vineyard churches that said, I don't know if it's just vineyard churches or other places, that they've seen bubbles during services. Have you ever heard of that?
I've not heard of that, but I'm actually kind of happy about it because I don't own this. Mm-hmm. I just promulgate it. I teach it, mm-hmm. And if they're seeing bubbles of the kingdom of heaven and bubbles in a vineyard church, I'm all over that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that would be an example of that shift toward good that I'm seeing and experiencing all kinds of places. Mm-hmm. Pretty exciting.
All right. So what do you see in the future for your book, and have you got response from that book?
Oh yeah. The Hollywood screenwriter read my book over a year ago, and he called me and said, you and I need to do a Starbucks conversation. And it turns out that he lives in Castle Rock, which is a little bit south of where I'm sitting right now. Mm-hmm. And so we met at a Starbucks, and he's a veteran of Hollywood, 32 years as a screenwriter. And he said, I read your book. And he said, you keep talking about these. Part of what you talk about in your book is just, it's amazing to me. And then a bubble of the kingdom of heaven showed up at our coffee table. And he went, this is what you were talking about. I went, yeah, welcome to heaven. And he said, we're done. This conversation is now over. I need to take a time out. And we created a relationship together. And so we're in the process of, part of the reason I'm a screenwriter myself now and a film producer is that we're producing a feature film based on the story of my life.
Wow.
And yeah, so there's reason that I'm still here. And I have a message. I carry a message with me that the kingdom of heaven is closer than we think. And everyone can experience it repeatedly and should. And my job is to be able to teach them that that's actually possible. That's really true. And then to teach them how. How do you do that? So, when this thing hits the silver screen, I have no idea where this is going to go, but I have a really good imagination, and I'm hopeful that people will sit in theaters a year and a half or so from now, and they'll be riveted to their chairs thinking about, that's just right. That the kingdom of heaven is actually closer than we think, and we should have that. That's exactly right. And they know it in their soul.
We should demand that.
Yeah,
So,
it's and it opens. The message of my life is there's nothing special about me. I mean, I'm not like a Captain America or a superhero, and I get to do all of these things and see all of this stuff, and that it's really just about me. Everybody, I'm the possibility. I'm what everyone can be. And you don't have to have a near-death experience in order to experience the kingdom of heaven. Everybody.
Stephen, would you
gets
say
equal opportunity? Everybody gets an opportunity to do that.
Would you say the more heaven bubbles you have in your life, the closer you are to the kingdom of heaven?
I would say that the more bubbles that you experience, the more it's kind of there's when you experience a bubble of the kingdom of heaven, it's the only place you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the bubbles never last. They last for a certain period of time. They pop, and then you're done.
Right.
And the inevitable response is, I want that. Whatever that is, I want that. I want more of that. It's exactly what my screenwriter said. He said, that was the weirdest thing ever happened to me, but I couldn't leave it alone. I want more of that. I said, well, welcome to heaven. Welcome to the encouragement. Mm-hmm. And so I'm at a place of, I think that this is possible. And I think that we've just forgotten. We've been experiencing experiential drift now for 100 generations. It's about time that we participate in a different kind of relationship. I wrote in the book that my life has been pretty amazing up until 2011. But I wrote in the book that I think the future of my life is it's going to be more exciting and a greater adventure than, frankly, the last 42 years have been. Mm-hmm. And I'm beginning to think that's actually a prophetic statement that I wrote in the book years ago. I'm really excited about where this is headed. More and more people are talking to me about they're experiencing bubbles of the kingdom of heaven in a way that it was surprising to them. And yet, my encouragement is be open and available, and they will happen more frequently.
Mm-hmm. So and you can. So the way you act, or the way you believe, or the emphasis of your life, your intentions, can increase or decrease those heaven bubbles, those moments in time, those interactions.
I just think that you get to a place where you're more receptive to the intersection of the kingdom in the here and now. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very careful about expectation means I'm in charge. Mm-hmm. And I've got God on a leash. I carry him around with me. That's a bad thing. But anticipating the kingdom of heaven, living in a life where you're available for whatever the Father may decide to do is pure joy, because you get to be involved in something that the Father is doing in the soul of another person or another group of people. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks ago we got a call from somebody who's in the Pentagon, and they are looking for somebody to come and teach veterans that have had near-death experiences and how to get well, how to reintegrate their life after what they've had. And I'm thinking, well, I'm all over that. I'm, it's like, and would I be willing to come into, VA hospitals in the Pentagon and, and people that have had near-death experiences and teach them, work with them. And my response to that is, in a heartbeat, I would love to do that. Mm-hmm. and I have a special. There's near and dear to my heart for veterans who have endured hardship, and the sovereignty of God doesn't end just because they're veterans and disabled or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Some
So,
veterans go through the experience of being in a war situation where a lot of their buddies around them may be hurt or disabled or killed, yet they walk away. Is that the sovereignty of God? Is that random?
I, I'm not a random person. I think that's all sovereign. I believe that the Father's in charge of all of that, and the good and the bad.
To
And the bad he uses ultimately for good.
Stephen, to what extent? And I remember talking to you about that. About you don't believe in random, and I'm all about that. But what to what extent and what level of randomness do you say it's not random? And for instance, you look down, you see a penny, or you're a second late to a movie, or to some almost innocuous thing. There's one product left on the shelf you're trying to buy, or I don't know,
Yeah.
some mundane thing. How what to what level is it well, I don't want to say managed, but is there to be recognized as an incident that's got to happen?
You know, the whole idea of sovereignty of God versus the randomness of life, and that I think there's a real answer somewhere in between those two.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I favor that the Father is sovereign over all. Um, and I don't exactly have a good sense about, the minutia and some of the stuff is just life
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes life just happens.
Right.
Our job is to figure out, okay, I've got to reinterpret my life in that regard. And it's now a relationship process that says, Lord, how do I relate to that? How do I reintegrate that? Because it was really nuts what happened to me. How do I go on? I want to go forward. How do I go forward?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go forward up. And that's where it touches the Father's heart. And he says, um, we got this.
Mm.
And you and me together, we got this.
All right. Well, Steve Musick, we're right here near the end of the broadcast. Anything you'd like to say about your book, your website, final thoughts to the audience? You go right ahead.
The most important part about our message is that the kingdom of heaven is closer than we think. And I want to touch with as many people as I can between now and the time that I go back to heaven with the tangibility of the kingdom being present in their lives. And so there's two parts about our work. Elaine and I we don't take a salary. We don't get any money out of this. All of our revenues, everything that we do goes back into kingdom activities and kingdom ministries and kingdom groups. We want to change a city for good. So that's important. We've dedicated our lives to this. And also, I'm an introvert. I live and breathe in the solitude of the Colorado mountains on a fly fishing stream. And
Nice.
so teaching is really, really hard for me. And it's something that I do out of compulsion. I've been called to do this. And in my weakness, the Father could be strong. And so I encourage you to come and read the book and spend time on our website. We'll be having all kinds of fun with the feature film. And stay tuned. The shift to good is coming. Mm-hmm. Excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the upcoming film, if you have a scene in there that you want to have, say, you got a cowboy radio host that is struggling, and he's looking for a sense of purpose, and you bring him in, and if you need an actor for that, let me know.
Okay.
If that's going to be in the plot.
I think we might pencil in somebody in a white hat and
Exactly. All right, Steve Musick, I appreciate you coming on the Edge television broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. It's a passion for me to do this. I've enjoyed doing it. It's been my honor. And thank you for helping me broadcast the message that the kingdom is close and we can experience it and should.
Okay. Steven Musick, I appreciate you coming on the show. Stay safe and have fun and catch those fish out there trout in those trout streams.
I will do that.
All right,
Daniel,
sir.
thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
All right. All right, everybody. That